Well, hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Happy
Welcome.
almost middle of December.
I know it's my mother told me yesterday there's 14 days till Christmas. I'm like,
Yes.
oh dear. Hello, everybody. My name's Leanne.
And I am Jason, and this is Let's Talk.
This is the space where no topic is off limits. We're going to discuss everything from resilience to leadership, money, relationships, mindset, and so much more.
We bring here at Let's Talk a different perspectives, real stories, and honest conversations. Because the things we don't often talk about are actually the things that matter most.
So, our goal here is really simple it's to spark new ideas, shift your mindsets, and give you practical tools that you can use in your leadership and your life.
Yeah. So whether you are tuning in today for just general inspiration, some growth, or just a fresh perspective, let's talk.
Let's talk. So, today's episode is one we all need because it's about digital and technological well-being. Technology isn't going anywhere. It's the way of the future. It's the way of our lives, but we can use it or it can use us. We can either use it to build things or, as well as our well-being, or we can use it to destroy our well-being. And as I always say, tech should be a servant and not a master. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, we let it master us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing just even since the pandemic with just all the enhancements of, technology on how it's become more of that master of our lives.
Yeah.
So with that said, technology connects us, it informs us, and it also gives us lots of opportunities. But on the other side of the teeter totter, it can drain our mental bandwidth. It pulls our attention in many different directions and it overloads our nervous system. So, in today's episode, we're going to unpack on how to build a healthier relationship with tech, one that supports our minds, our mood, our productivity, and our emotional well being.
Yeah. And you know me, I'm always going to bring some of the neuroscience into this. So, what I want to say is that when a notification hits our phone or computer or our watch, really anything, our brain gets a tiny dopamine spike, which is the same neurochemical that supports reward. It's novelty, it's the anticipation. Our brain actually likes it. But what it actually does is it kind of programs the brain. It gives us this kind of habit loop that phone buzz equals reward or email notification equals reward. And over time, this really hijacks our attention. This is why so many people feel scattered, overwhelmed, or constantly on, right? Like we don't even go to the bathroom these days without our devices with us. Right? We're
Right.
on all the time. And the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that we use for our decision making, our executive functions, for self control and focus, becomes fatigued and fractured almost. So we're training our brain to be unfocused and fractured as opposed to focused and on point. That's why after a full day online, we feel mentally depleted, even when we haven't done much physically. Not to mention the eye burn. I don't know about you, but I also get eye burn, right? If I'm kind of looking at my device all day. So it really does impact our well-being and how we show up. But more importantly, we're training our brain on how to be less focused, and that's not good.
Yeah. And Leanne, isn't there a neuroscience statistic out there that if you have your phone like on a ring or a buzz, like when a notification comes in, that like you're in that moment because of the distraction that it causes, like your IQ goes down? Is it like 20% or 30%?
Yeah, I don't remember it was that study was done by Middlesex University, and they said that it was the equivalent of functioning stoned, like smoking a joint, right? Like that's a significant impact in the brain, right? So
Huge.
huge. So when we're trying to focus on something and we get that ping, it really creates a huge, huge issue for us, because it does actually make our brain function like it's working under the influence of things that we shouldn't be working under.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and with that, mental fatigue spills into our emotional world, right? So, which equals to low resilience, shorter tempers, disconnection from others, more comparison, especially on social media. I mean, it amazes me on how often I see how technology has just disconnected humans to humans.
Mm.
And it's just like, I think it was in one of our conversations, you might have mentioned in one of our episodes, when I think you were picking up or dropping off one of your kids, and like the group was walking down the sidewalk, and this, like, nobody was conversing with one another. It was just literally in their phone.
Yeah.
um did I get that right? That story
Absolutely.
right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly the story. And I was saddened by it, because I thought, here's an opportunity for you to connect and communicate. And instead, they probably are communicating, but they're doing it, on their devices, as opposed to eyeball to eyeball communication, which is where we learn emotional intelligence. It's where we learn about ourselves. Um,
Yep.
and this low resilience and short temper, who wants that? None of us. And yet we're kind of doing it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, you know, as we move to the next part of our conversation today, we want to take some time to talk about our emotional intelligence and our along with our emotional self-management in this digital age, in this digital economy. Um, so when you really think about it, right, technology amplifies emotions, both in a helpful way, but also in very unhelpful ways too. And I think that's when that self-awareness comes in, right? Of like, hey, this is unhelpful, or knowing that this is helpful. So when we look at some emotional intelligence tools, we can ask ourselves three specific questions. First question is, what emotion does this platform trigger in me? Question two, do I use this app with intention or out of habit? And question three, is this helping me feel aligned, or is it adding anxiety? And I think this is where, like, that self-awareness piece comes in, right? Like, when you ask these selves your questions, then you can go a little bit deeper to say, yeah, I use this blank app really out of habit, not really out of doing anything good for myself, right? Or it could be on the opposite end of the teeter-totter, right? Where I use this app to, like, track my steps every day or track my food intake, so that I'm doing something healthy for my life. So looking at these questions, um, and really giving an authentic answer to yourself, and not kind of self-correct along the way, I think that's where you're going to get that truer awareness around emotional intelligence and emotional self-management in this area, in this digital age and economy that we're living in, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No. One of the questions that I really love also to ask is, am I using it, or is it using me? Like, you can use it as a tool, or you can be used by it. Like, I was talking to my father actually earlier this week, and I said to him, "Oh, what are you doing?" We're on the phone, and he said, "Oh, I was watching reels." He said, "I thought I was here for 15 minutes. I've just looked at the time and an hour has passed." And I think that's what happens, right? And then we have anxiety or guilt, or we've got these other things that come up, because I should have been doing this and then I'm doing this. Or the other side of it is, are we using it just to numb ourselves because we don't want to feel emotions? Right. So
Mhm.
rather than feeling the feels, we'll go and, do something else to avoid feeling. And yet, feeling our feelings is one of the greatest ways that you can move through the negativity back into a more positive environment. But
Yeah.
if we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to do that, then we're kind of suppressing these negative emotions. And I say negative lightly because, Jason, you and I know that there's no such thing as a positive or a negative emotion. All emotions are just data and they give us information, right? But society has us think that, happy, joy, those emotions are good, sad, anger, those emotions are bad. So we've got this languaging around positive and negative, but really emotions are just data. And if we can actually feel the feels and move through them and ask, what is this telling me? Then we're actually much more resilient, much more able to kind of deal with what's going on in our world. So I love these questions, and I love the concept of know thyself. Like really, ask and know thyself.
Yeah.
Because the more that we do this, the better it is. And EQ, or emotional intelligence, is simply awareness plus choice. Like the data comes in to us, and if we've got awareness of it, then we have a choice as to how we respond, as opposed to being on automatic pilot. And in the digital space, choice means setting boundaries, right? Like sometimes we've got to actually set boundaries for ourselves. I remember laughing at myself, and I'll own this. I remember a couple of years ago, my kids were on their phone, and I yelled out to them, "Put your bloody phones down. You've been on them for hours." And then looked down, and my phone was in my hand. And I'm like, how can how can I tell them to set boundaries if I'm not setting boundaries myself, right? So we've got to create or curate our digital environment, and we need to lead by example as adults, right? Especially if you've got littler people in the house, because monkey see, monkey do. So choosing what, choosing who, and choosing how much you let into your mental world is really a choice. And technology can kind of flood your internal and your mental world. So setting boundaries is really something that we need to do. And just remember, it's not just that you have a cluttered inbox, you've also got a cluttered nervous system, right? So all of this stuff coming in, it affects our nervous system. It can either regulate us and have us feeling good, or it can have us feeling anxious. It can have us feeling a whole range of different things. So we need to make sure that we're not further cluttering our mental space and our nervous system. I mean, my inbox is horrendous. If you saw that, you would laugh. But I'm yeah, I'm not one of these, minimalist really anywhere in my life, I have to say, but especially not in my inbox. But what I'm conscious of is the effect that it's having on my nervous system these days. Like I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, right? Like, like I have some friends in my life that is like they cannot have like a red dot on their screen. Like they have to respond immediately, right? And there's, from my personal opinion, there's good things with that, and then there's also like you never know just how to put down, right? But it is interesting kind of how different things with technology affect people's mindset and nervous system. I mean, like I have one friend who she's like, "Oh my God, how can you have all those notifications on your phone?" She was like, "That would just send me into a state of anxiety." And I'm like, "Well, I just let it go, and I just let something like that not bother me." So when you were talking about the nervous system, it's interesting the triggers that different people have, right?
Yeah.
Which I think leads nicely into the next part of our conversation, which is digital overload and continued conversation around boundaries. When we look at the trajectory of history, right, we live in the most connected time, but yet it's the most lonely. And I just want folks who are listening or may not have time to watch the live but will listen later is really think about that. Like we are literally connected across the globe, right? I mean, you and I are doing podcasts on two different continents, 19 hours apart. But also it's created the most loneliness we have in the world. And why? because connection has become digital and less human. Just look at dating apps, for example. We swipe left, we swipe right, and often forget that there is a person on the other side of that screen. We know, and we are no longer going out and being social, having real conversations, and exchanging that human to human in person energy. Instead, we are in our homes alone, making choices on pictures that may or may not be real or current, especially oh my gosh, with AI and just how much can be created, um from a fake standpoint of view. So just think about that, right? Like, and ask yourself, like, am I one of those people who sits home and not going out and creating that balance and alignment in my life? um and also, we are also overloaded. And where does this overload come from? Right? It comes from constant notifications. And especially if you have notifications set on with a ding, like, sometimes I just want to say, people, put it on silent or put it on buzz. But but it's those constant notifications, the endless scrolling, um, multitasking across devices, and literally allowing yourself to be available 24/7.
Hmm.
And sometimes, when you were making that statement, Leanne, where you were kind of telling your kids, like, get off your dang devices, and then you realize you have it in your hand. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done this, but or if it's ever popped up where it's like you look on your phone and it'll kind of give you the download for the day and the week of like how much you've been on this type of app or been on social media or been on email. And it's just like, oh my God, like sometimes it's like half your day. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, but it's just because it's just such on automatic drive with it that sometimes we do not take time to pause and say, hey, some boundaries need to be set here, and I need to be intentional about those. um, and I just want to hone in before I turn it over to you to talk a little bit on the neuroscience of this, Leanne. Is being available 24/7, you have a choice in that, but it's an intentional choice that you make. I am going to be available 24/7, or I'm setting boundaries, like I'm not I'm not answering work texts or emails after 8 p.m. at night. So I really want people to think about that, because I hear it all the time, like, oh my God, we're connected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And but it's just like this hamster wheel conversation where there's like literally no awareness around that, like, you actually have choice in this, but you're not allowing and seeing it is operating such in your blind spot. And so, I want folks to, as they listen to this conversation today, is where are you allowing and where are you putting boundaries up?
Yeah. And I want to double click on that, Jason, because one of the conversations that I have with leaders in organizations is that if you're sending an email at 9 o'clock at night, your team then feel like they need to respond. So as leaders, we need to set the boundaries first, right? Like,
Yeah.
because we want our people to show up at the best that they possibly can. But if they're on the hamster wheel, as you said, and if they're on all the time, there's no replenishment, there's no refreshing of the brain, right? They feel like, and so that anxiety level increases for all of us. So, the call here is for leaders to say, you set the boundary and say, we will not send emails or expect responses after 6 p.m. or whatever it is that works for you and your organization. And because we've been so trained to be on,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know how
Yeah.
to turn off. Um,
Yeah.
and just your point about, turning off your notifications. My phone lives on silent these days. It is always on silent. I never get a ringtone, I don't get beeps, and I don't have the vibrate on. Because I found that every time that had come in, it got to a point where it would like it would give me more anxiety. There's another thing I've got to deal with. There's another thing I've got to deal with, right? So I've allocated specific times in the day, and we'll talk more about that. But people say to me, "But aren't you afraid you're going to miss something?" No, I'm not. because if it's really urgent, people can get me.
Yeah.
But I don't need this constant, barrage of information and requests and demands, right, of my time. I also want to loop back to this whole online dating situation. Um, because as you know, I'm single, ready to mingle. But the thing is, the whole online dating thing is actually soul destroying, because you're almost waiting to be chosen also,
Yeah.
right? And so I've spoken to many women and men about this who have gone through the process of these online dating. And people can be more bold, more brash, more offensive almost, because, keyboard warriors, they don't have um, they're not face to face, where they might be more discerning about the things that they're saying. So it can be really frightening. You're also then meeting strangers in locations and you don't know who they are, you don't know anything about them, you haven't met their social circle. If you meet somebody out, you're seeing who they're associated with, you're watching their behavior. It gives you more information about who this person is, and that energy exchange is so important. So even though you can swipe left or right and you've got a plethora of opportunities, the downside to that is that people now aren't committing because there might be something better, right? So we're actually not even leaning into relationships. And there's an epidemic at the moment where men are not asking women out anymore. And women of my generation kind of feel that men should still be the ones, right? Like we're a bit old school in that way. So you've got women waiting to be approached, men who aren't approaching. And so both sexes are actually missing out on really good stuff. And it's because of this online digital swiping that does that. The other thing that I want to say about those platforms is that they're designed to not actually match you with your partner. Because if they matched you with your perfect person, they would be out of business.
Yep.
So they match you with somebody who might be just a little bit interesting or just a little bit your person, but not actually. So we're spending so much time doing this, forgetting about the human, not realizing that it's like a poker machine, right? They're actually designed for you not to win. And these dating apps are very much that. They're designed for you not to win the majority of the time, because they want you to keep scrolling, keep paying to see who likes you, all of these things. And it is creating much more disconnection. And like I said, people just aren't doing it their old way. Like there's just no more of that, which I think is so sad, because I'm much better in person than I am on an app, let me tell you. Like, really. And I think most people are.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, with the digital enhancements of photos, with photos that aren't current, you don't really know who the hell or what the hell is going on. So I find it just soul destroying, really. So I just wanted to kind of double click on those things, because I think it needs to be said that we need to go back to the way it used to be in so many ways, where we actually talk to people and meet them and have conversations and, go out on dates rather than just sitting in your home scrolling, which does lead to extreme loneliness.
Yeah. And, I think it was in last week's episode where you brought in a quote that, a colleague of yours heard that said, as machines are getting better and smarter, humans need to be better humans.
Yeah.
I think there is something real key to that. And, because humans are made the way they are for a certain reason. And I think sometimes, through technology, people think, I'm going to get the perfect thing, I'm going to get the perfect outcome, etc. Where, it's like, if you look at it as a companion, or as a, hey, that you're there to help me, versus an everything, like, I think you get different perspective and insights when you kind of have that mindset. And, one thing that I wanted to double click on too, when you were talking about like emails and notifications and all that, I worked for an organization one time where, like, and it was a national organization, and there was no, like, you could not, in an unwritten policy, not send an email after 6 p.m. in your time zone, unless you were sending it, I think the other, like those of us here on the West Coast, which was the last to like shut down, but that it was like, that doesn't mean you can't work on emails, but just schedule them for the next day.
Yeah.
So then that way you're kind of achieving that both end of like that internal, okay, it's like I feel like I'm caught up for tomorrow's haywireness, but also too, I'm not making my team or coworkers feel like, oh my gosh, I need to respond to this message. So I just wanted to double click on those couple things.
Yeah, it's so important, really, because like I keep saying, for people to show up at their best, their brain needs to reset. And if they're on all the time, it just can't happen. And again, the neuroscience kind of talks about, every interruption, even those small ones, forces your brain to um, to go unfocused, to go offline almost, right? Like it kind of resets where you're at, but not giving yourself replenishment. So it's creating this constant and cognitive fatigue. And we know that multitasking is a myth because it's actually not doing two things at once. It's task switching really quickly, which is super exhausting for the brain. It's like a mental triathlon. The thing with multitasking also is that people think that they're doing better because they're doing multiple things at once, but they're prone to much more mistakes, right? And they're doing, two things half-assed instead of doing one thing really well, right? So you've got to excuse my Aussie colloquialism language there, but we think we're doing really good. I'm multitasking, I'm doing multiple things, but we're fatiguing our brain, we're making mistakes, and we're not actually giving anything our full attention. So
Right.
we really need to create these digital boundaries and have them become well-being tools, right? Like, because if we don't kind of put these boundaries in, we're really just going to be frazzled. And I've already spoken to it, but turn off non-essential notifications. I work a lot with business owners, and what they tend to do is they come into the office and they check their email, and they're using and they're answering calls and they're doing all of this stuff, and they're kind of bouncing all over the place. And one of the things that I kind of say to them is your best time for most people is in the morning. You should be using that to do the hard tasks, not check your emails, not be, bouncing around all your notifications. So oftentimes it's like turn all of that off, turn your notifications off, anything that's not essential, turn your phone onto silent or onto focus mode, and actually do hyper-focused work when your brain is at its best. Because what we tend to do is do all of this other stuff, and then we try and do focused work, and our brain's already fatigued, right? We're not actually showing up as our best. So, turn off those notifications, create no phone zones. Like there are no phones here. And, we've got a policy in our house that there's no phones at the dinner table for that reason. It's just like, no, this is connection time. And, it's so interesting because all of us will walk up to the dinner table with our phone, and then they'll wait for me to say, put your phones down. Right? This is a note. I think they're always hoping that I might forget, but I don't. The other thing that we can do is set app time limits. Like, I don't mind if you want to, doom scroll for half an hour because you just need to defrag and, give yourself a bit of a break, but put a time limit on it, because otherwise that can go on for hours if you're not careful. So whether it's games, whether it's doom scrolling, whether it's, whatever it is, your social media, put an app limit on it. Allow yourself some time, but then put that boundary around, okay, when that's finished at this time, I'm going to go and do something else. The other thing that I often say to people is put your phone in another room during sleep or work, because we're often tempted, as the first thing that we do in the morning is to pick up our phone, right? And if it's right next to us and it's buzzing, or if it's ringing, then it's interrupting our sleep, it's interrupting our abilities. So, and I like this also because, especially if you want to get into an exercise routine and set yourself up for success, turning the alarm on and then putting the phone in another room means that you actually have to get out of bed in the morning to go and turn the alarm off. And then you're more inclined to look after your physical well-being as well. Like I really believe in meditation in the morning and moving your body. But if your phone's there and it vibrates, you're much more inclined just to pick that up and do that than to actually get up turn the alarm off, and then be motivated to meditate, or alternatively have your physical kind of exertion, whatever that looks like. And do not disturb. Put that on your focus time on your iPhones, or your do not disturb, and block times out. Even in your diary, like I often say to people, like block out focus time in your diary so people know not to disturb you. Like, and value that as much as you would a meeting or a client meeting, or a meeting with your boss or whatever it might be. Because if you don't value your time, no one else will. And if
Yeah.
we can put these boundaries in place, what we're actually finding is that it's not about restriction, it's about reclaiming control. It's reclaiming your ownership of your time, and working with your brain and mind and doing what actually works best for you. So these are little things that you can do that have such a profound impact on your mental capacity, your emotional capacity, your resilience, your overall, well-being. Yeah, I can keep going on and on about this, Jason. As you can see, like it's a real thing for me, because neuroscience shows us just how bad it is. And here in Australia, as at yesterday, all children under the age of 16 have been blocked from social media. So the big TikToks and Facebooks and all of these apps are supposed to be blocking out younger people because of the impact on the brain, because we don't want them to be comparing themselves socially. We don't, which creates depression, and all sorts of negative mental health issues, right? Because comparison is the key to evil, I find. If we're comparing ourselves to other people, then we're not appreciating who we really are. And what they're actually comparing themselves to are photoshopped, unrealistic images. It's not real. And yet these young people are trying to live up to that. So Australia has just done this thing. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out over time, where the social media apps will be fined big time if they're allowing minors in. And minors have got to put, and I say minors under 16, they've got to show ID, or they've got to actually prove their age in order to get onto these apps now, which I think is brilliant and also scary, because for some in minority groups, their only connection to like people could be through those apps. So we've got to be mindful about caring for those around us, especially if they're not the standard cisgendered, privileged person who might have, resources all around them.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting to hear from your perspective, since you have one of your kids who's under that age threshold, to see how things play out. And I do definitely agree, the having the, I don't know, in some way there needs to be somewhat a happy medium, especially for minority groups, or underprivileged groups, marginalized groups, because that's where they, like you said, a lot of times find community. And sometimes it's the only community that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And what's interesting is that a lot of those companies, right, their corporate headquarters is out of America. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out, and and maybe some learnings that the bigger corporation can actually implement more on a global scale, for things that are working out in a good way, for the best of humanity.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to double click actually on two things. One, on the do not disturb blocks, because I know a lot of people have a hard time with this, especially at work, for maybe their leaders or their bosses who don't pay attention that well to calendars and blocked off time and just pick up the phone whenever they want. And because obviously that do not disturb is on there for some reason, or do not schedule meetings. And so I encourage those people who have that issue, to some way to have that conversation with your leader, your supervisor, manager, whatever the design structure is in your organization, because their awareness may not be there, and that may be the the magic tool to help them get into their awareness, to be a little bit more mindful of calendars. And maybe it might be a teachable thing for them to actually put some of that time on their own calendar. Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is when you were talking about the task switching versus multitasking. What came, like the great example that came to mind was a surgeon, right? When you look at a surgeon, I mean, they have a whole team in there, right? To do check vitals, to check this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, sometimes there's like 15, 20 people in that surgery room, so that the surgeon can literally laser focus on whatever surgery they're doing, so they're not having to task switch, because all those other people are taking those tasks over and leading them, so that the surgeon can do his or her or their job for the best possible outcome. So I think we can learn a lot from a surgeon in that particular area, because it's really powerful how they have that designed for surgeons. Because it's like, I wouldn't want a surgeon doing a surgery on me and they're task switching,
Yeah.
you know, during a surgery. Like, I want them focused on whatever the surgery is, right? So I just wanted to put those two little things in there.
Yeah, great points. And not just surgeons, I mean, for all of us, right? If we
Yeah.
can hyper focus on one thing and complete that and take a pause before we move on to the next thing, A, we'll get more done, we'll make less mistakes, and we'll feel accomplished.
Yeah.
That also is a great thing, right? Because it
Yeah.
builds that internal self-resilience and self-efficacy, because we're actually getting things done rather than having multiple things half done, which makes you feel anxious and out of control and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was I watched this small YouTube interview, and I'm forgetting her name right at the moment, but she's the former president and CEO of PepsiCo,
Mhm.
um, Indian descent. But I remember she was talking about, so many leaders feel like in order to have success, you need to have a full calendar. And she was like, that's not really the case, actually. And it was more around intention and focusing on the right things. And I think that leads to exactly what you were saying, to where, making less mistakes so that you feel more accomplished. You don't have to do 90 things in one day to be like, oh, I'm feeling accomplished because my calendar had 90 different meetings on it today. So with that, I think that leads nicely into some areas of how tech can be used as a tool for well-being. And we have a couple different sections here. I'll talk about the first section, which is when we use technology intentionally, it can actually elevate your well-being. So some of the things that we can look at and think about is meditation apps. Calm, Headspace are two of them. I know there's a lot of like white noise apps out there. I've used some just because it helps me like sleep better, like, or at least fall to sleep, right? Um, breath work timers, which could also be like an insight timer to like really focus in on your breath work, which is so essential and something that I think a lot of us take for granted.
Mm.
Where it's actually, somebody told me, I don't know, this might have been a month ago, the two things that all of us do in life is we enter this world with a breath and we take our last breath.
Yeah. And your breath
But
comes with you everywhere you go.
everywhere you go,
Everywhere you go.
can't can't leave it, or take a break from it. Um, so really being mindful about your breath and your breath work, and what are some helpful tech apps that can help you be more intentional with that area. Sleep soundscapes, like I said, I've used different white noise apps, Rain, um, some different types of sound beats on Spotify, that really do bring my body more into a state of calm and relax, so that I can just drift off to sleep and have a really good sound night's sleep. Habit trackers. We all have habits, some good, some not good, some that fall in the middle. So there's a plethora of them out there. Also, the Apple Watch, an Aura Ring for health data. I know all iPhones also come with like the little health app that's just automatically on there that has the heart, so it's free. That tracks your steps, and um, there's also the Fitbit too, that can help with steps and just general health stuff, and when you sleep, excuse me, as well. And then the last one in this area is learning apps that can enhance your learning. Audible, I know that we've talked about that a lot in like our book recommendations. Masterclass, and I know Masterclass, if you sign up for it, it's like, I don't know, it's like $15 a month, and it's like you get access to hear these world leaders and influencers speak. Um, Udemy, and Blinklist. I'm not really too familiar with those two. Are you familiar with those two,
Yeah.
Leeanne?
So
Because
Udemy has lots of courses, so you can sign up and buy little courses, mini courses on there, and do learning. And there's a plethora of stuff that you can do. And Blinklist, I believe, is like book reviews
got it.
from memory. So it does uh, shortcuts, or not shortcuts, like a synopsis of a book, so you don't have to read the whole thing. It pulls out the best thing from memory. I'm pretty sure that's what Blinklist is. But there's all sorts of apps that you can use to learn, right? So really important. And I might just jump in there, Jason, because one of the things that I often do at night is I will put on a guided meditation
Mm-hmm.
in order to sleep, because it has the calming music. It helps me to relax all the muscles in my body, and then I can drift off into slumber. Insight Timer is a great app because you can actually set it. It's a meditation / mindfulness app, but you can have it to breathe if you want to hear breathing, so you can breathe with
Mm-hmm.
it. You can have it as a guided meditation. You can put background music. You can adapt it and use it as need be. And so the thing here is technology isn't bad. It's just using it in an effective way, right? And those boundaries around when and how is super important.
Yeah.
Go on.
Can I double click on something, Leanne? When you were talking about like those different apps, for like guided meditation, sleeping, etc. So for some of those listeners out there, who may be thinking, oh God, like I can't spend another $5 on an app. Almost every single app that I've used in these kind of meditation slash white noise, there's all free versions of them.
Yeah.
But there's also the paid enhancements if you want to unlock different features. So just know that, like, go to your Apple store or your Android store and just play around in there and see what's available, and just know that almost at least all the ones that I've come across have like a free version, where you get the basics, but then if you want the enhancements, then you have to pay the monthly fee.
And even if you can't do that, right, YouTube has
Yeah.
a heap of meditations, white noise, a whole range of stuff. Like if you're going to watch YouTube, or if you're going to use it for your own well-being, right? Like rather than watching so much other stuff that we can watch that's actually terrifying sometimes.
Yes.
But there's a heap of free resources out there. You don't need to spend money necessarily. You can find a particular voice. And, in order to listen to these things, it is about what voice resonates with me because of sound, right? Frequency. Does that agitate me or does it relax me? So you can test and measure and have lots of different people, or lots of different styles, I should say, on YouTube, which is great. So some of these things are absolutely free. Some of the other tools that we can use to support our emotional intelligence is journaling apps. Now, people kind of hear journaling and they go, oh, and I know I did for a very long time, until I read The Artist's Way. I did that in a book club with a group of women, and they talk about morning pages, like so journaling every morning before you do anything else. And I did it begrudgingly. I have to say, I was not happy about having to journal every day. My mornings are already chaotic and flat out. And what I noticed is initially it was like a to-do list for the day, right? It was, but then more and more stuff started coming out. It'd be, and then it became much more than my to-do list. But even just the to-do list helped me to align and be present and focused on what I was doing. So whether you're an old school pen to paper girl like I happen to be, or some of these apps that are out there for journaling can really help you, and you can track your progress over time.
Mm-hmm.
There's also lots of resources out there for journaling prompts. Like sometimes you kind of sit there and go, well, what am I supposed to journal on? A lot of these apps will give you prompts, but even if not, you can get onto Facebook and put in journaling prompts, and you'll get a plethora of stuff, or in YouTube. And again, there's a whole lot of stuff out there. But it's really about know thyself, and journaling helps you cut through some of the stuff. And there's something about just writing it and getting things out of your head and onto metaphorical paper, if you're using an app,
Mm-hmm.
that really just calms that parasympathetic nervous system, because
Yep.
it's no longer swirling around in your head, it's out. Right. And when it's out, then you can actually deal with it differently. So there's something really profound about journaling. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. But there's apps for that. There's mood tracker apps. And one that I use, and I know you use it as well, Jason, is How We Feel. So it comes up
Mm-hmm.
multiple times a day and says, how are you feeling? And it's got, a whole heap of words that you can click on, and it tracks your mood over a period of time. Now, they say that the majority of people live in 5 to 7 emotions consistently, like habitual emotions. So our mental state, our emotional state is often a habit. And until we become aware of it, we can't necessarily change it, right? So these mood trackers help us to navigate and be aware of where our moods are, which moods or emotions we're feeling more often than not. And then that gives us data that we can start actually modifying things if we need to, right? So it's a really good way to navigate that space, because most people just feel down, but they're not aware that actually I feel that every second day. That's interesting. What's causing that? Or I feel really joyous, and actually I want more of that. What's causing that? So you can actually start to navigate that state, that space, which, these are all tools for self-reflection. Oftentimes I say to people, record yourself. If you don't want to write an app on your phone, you've got voice recordings.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can record yourself and have a conversation. And get to know yourself better that way. You can listen back later as you need to. You can now these days use AI, which we'll talk about in a minute, because you know how much I love it. But you can then put those voice recordings into an app, and you can get a transcript, or you can pull out themes. You can ask AI, but it is a tool for self-reflection. Like, get to know yourself, because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And then there's also focus enhancing features or apps like Freedom on an iPhone. I use focus mode on my laptop because I use Mac. On an Android, there's the do not disturb. So these will allow your messages to still come in, but it stops the dings and pings, right? So it's not diverting your attention away. You're making conscious choices about when you pick your phone up, as opposed to it calling you every few minutes and directing your attention away from what you're doing. So I don't want you to think about removing tech. It's not about getting rid of it, because we can't. It's the way of our future. It's the way of our world. But we can align tech to our values,
Mm-hmm.
to our goals, and to our identity if we do it with intention. And that's really the key here. Jason, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, love the How We Feel app, right? And I think it's also an app too, right? Where sometimes you just kind of ebb and flow out of it. Like sometimes it's like, okay, you know what? I really need to get in touch with how I'm feeling for whatever A, B, and C reasons. So I'll be very diligent. And then other times I won't be so diligent. So, sometimes it's with some of these apps, you kind of ebb and flow for, kind of where you're at in life or what needs you what needs you need met at the time. And the only other thing I was going to say is on the journaling, whether you do that pen to paper or through an app, sometimes if you're feeling a writing block or you're just too much in your head, and use a prompt question. I mean, you can look that up on AI, you can look it up on Google, like what are some key prompt questions, and it could be very specific. Maybe feel like you need to journal in a certain area of your life, and there's a plethora of them that will come up. So just know that, Google and AI, which we'll be talking about next, are there to help you too if you feel kind of stuck, and to help you kind of like get out of that writer's block mode, to at least get yourself focused in some area. And some days you just may wake up and you can write till the cows come home. But I just want to let people know, that if you do feel stuck in writer's block, prompt questions are actually very helpful.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that How We Feel app is actually free. So it's one of those ones that you can use and it doesn't cost you anything. So I kind of alluded to my passion for AI, but I thought, I just wanted to double click on that one a little bit, Jason, because I know that you and I have talked in depth about the use of AI, and I was not an adopter initially. I was against the machines taking over the world. But what I've come to realize through learning how to use some of these tools around AI is that it actually buys your time back, right? It's actually a modern well-being advantage. And it's really interesting because I kind of thought AI is going to replace jobs, but it doesn't actually replace you. It releases you. It releases you from a whole lot of stuff. So when you use artificial, like whether it's Chat GPT or Claude, or there's so many different apps, right? But when you use it intentionally, AI becomes a time-buying partner that clears mental clutter, right? So it helps you kind of get your thinking straight. It automates the repetitive tasks that you need to do, so you can get AI to do things for you that are repetitive. It frees you to focus on the work that actually matters, that only you can do. So you can get AI to enhance and expand your cognitive bandwidth, because people say, oh, it's going to make us dumb. It doesn't. It actually does the repetitive tasks that you shouldn't be doing, really, because your time is spent, or better spent, being more creative, being more focused, like human to human experience, doing fewer mental tasks, really. With AI, you might have less decision fatigue because there's so much information, and, you've got to qualify it. I wouldn't say just trust it without doing some research, but you can ask AI questions. It'll come up with a whole lot of stuff. You can do some research. It takes what used to take me a day might take me an hour. What used to take me an hour might take me 10 minutes now. So it actually frees up my time to spend time with people that I love, my family. It allows me to be more creative, right? It allows me to have more connection. So AI can really create more space for you to be creative, to be the kind of leader that you want to actually be able to connect with your team. So there's so many benefits of using AI, whether it's to draft emails or to organize information or summarize meeting notes or analyze data, or generate ideas and handle repetitive admin. Like, you can set AI up as a tool, and the more you use it, the more it gets to know you, your style of work, your languaging. So it means that you get to then redirect your energy to that higher level thinking, that higher value thinking, not the busy work that we keep doing on the rat race, right? Of all the things that we've got to do that has us feeling overwhelmed. It allows you to do the work that actually matters to you, which is much better for your nervous system. So AI really, if you can pair it with your self-awareness and with EQ, you can create a workflow that's more calmer, that's more productive, that's more aligned with who you are and who you want to be and who you want to become. So it can help you in so many ways. It doesn't just save time. It gives you back your life, right? It gives you back your life, because in that saved time, you get to do the things that light you up. as opposed to
Mhm.
those mundane tasks that we don't enjoy. It gives you time for presence with the people that you love. It gives you time for purpose. And it gives you time to do the work that only you can do, you know? And so I'm an AI convert. Do I think that there's potential for badness? Absolutely. But I think that as humans get better at using AI, we're training it to get better. So, to your point of that quote that you mentioned earlier in our conversation today, Jason, as technology gets smarter, humans need to get smarter too, right? And we
Yep.
are, and we're training AI, and we want to train it with emotional intelligence, with heart centered stuff. Um, yeah, I think that's all I can say to that. Otherwise, I could go on another rampage, but I won't, or a tie.
Well, yeah, and you know what opened for what opened up for me as you were talking about AI, because I hear a lot of times, right, that like, oh my gosh, AI is going to create less critical thinkers. People aren't going to have those critical thinking skills, etc. Could I see that happening if not used in the right way? Absolutely. And also is if you use it intentionally, like you were talking, it actually will help free up your cognitive capacity and cognitive load to be able to better critically think in those areas that you really do need to give time to.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's like if you use it as a replacement for everything, yeah, you're not using much of your critical thinking. But if you use it as that companion, and strategically and intentionally, you're actually really allowing yourself um, to be a better, more strategic critical thinker on things that need your critical thinking.
yeah,
Um, and I hope that side of AI, that I hope is what trickles down into learning and education and to the young people and in the future of learning.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, And like you, I mean, I could go on a whole nother rampage. We
Like
could
I
just do,
just find since I've been using AI, I've been much more creative.
yeah,
I've gotten so much more done. I mean, because AI is doing some of the work, it frees me up to do this sort of thing that I love doing, right? Which I probably wouldn't have done before because there were so many other busy things that I had to do, the busy work, which is not fulfilling.
no,
So yeah. So I'm going to stop there because we're not here to sell you on AI. But if you can use any kind of technology in your favor with intent, it really can give you back your time, your energy, and your space to be the best human that you can be.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then with that, right, we also need to talk about how can you detox from the digital world, right? Because we all need that time. Since we're, as we've talked about, in the most connected time, but also in the most lonely time, on 24/7 hours a day, 24/7, etc. But also as humans, we have to be mindful to do the digital detox and lean in more to the reconnection of human to human. So a detox doesn't mean abandoning technology. That's not what we're saying, but it's a means of resetting your nervous system, doing that internal work that's going to be able to help you show up as the best of possible human, to get the best possible work done and be and connect in the best possible ways. So some tips for you on how to do this digital detox so that you can lean into that reconnection and do that internal reset. So, do a 1 hour phone free in the morning. And we've given you some helpful tips. It could be meditation, it could be journaling, it could be going for a walk, it could be doing that, like setting your alarm and putting it out in a room where you can hear, where you have to get up and get some movement going. So honestly, there's so many ways that you can fill an hour in the morning without your phone in hand or laptop and lap or iPad in hand. Also, one day a week, limit your apps. you know, to say on, you could do an appless Wednesday and go out for appetizers, you know,
A different kind of app.
yeah, different kind of app, right? One that you consume. But, one day a week, limit your apps. Not that hard. It's all with intention. And you will be amazed on what else you can fill that time with. Do a nature walk without your phone. Okay. Or any type of device, because there's also the notifications and all that on the Apple Watches too. So just because you don't have your phone in hand, you got to disable them here too. So don't try to sneak that one in. Keep wearing it for the tracking of your health outcomes, right? But if you're going to disable one, disable the other. Also, be mindful about taking social media breaks. You don't need to be on social media every single hour of every single day. Um, you know, like when you were talking about Leanne, the anybody below 16, right? Like no social media. I would love that just for one day in the adult world. One day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be amazing on what people, or maybe 2 days, one for them to like have their freakouts and all that, and then like the next day to actually like be intentional about doing something. You'd be going out and volunteering, or having coffee or a meal with a friend or spouse or partner, or finding time to reconnect to people who you've been meaning to reconnect with.
Yeah.
Also, put in some analog time, reading, journaling, pen to paper, creating, being creative. I mean, it's amazing on what you can get done and how much kind of that worry and fear can kind of just dissipate and go into the background when you're being creative, because you're like literally focusing, not reconditioning, refocusing your mind on something where you're like using your hands or using your mind and your hands together or whatever, but just be creative. And we all are creative in different ways. Tech-free meals with family. Leanne, you gave a great example with that. And I think that's just something that's just missing globally, is like, I mean, the amount of times that I observe people in restaurants or go over to people's houses, that's all their people are on their phones when they're eating. It's like, I can't even eat without your phone.
I went and had a coffee last week with somebody, and I think I counted 15 times that they picked up their phone during, the time that we were together. Say it was an hour. And I didn't, like, my phone was in my bag. And not that I'm being righteous about it, but I'm trying to practice some of these skills, right? And at one point, I kind of giggled and I said, wow, we should surgically attach that to your hand. That way you don't have to keep using your arm to reach for it, which brought some laughter and lightness to it. And then it was like, yeah, hey, actually, because it is an addiction because of the reward systems. It works like a poker machine. So we're addicted to every time it buzzes or dings or something. It's so sad. Anyway, just
Yeah, no, um and what it made me think of is with the tech-free meals with family, and um just this constant need is like, if you just put it away, like it'll become a new habit. Right? I mean, there's always ways to rewire new pathways in our brain.
Yeah.
It's often talked about in neuroscience. I mean, everything is hardwired in our brain, but you can create new pathways and new habits. You just got to be intentional about it. It's going to take a little elbow grease to do it. But it's amazing. Like once you have the new habit, it's just like, oh, okay. I mean, it's just like, whenever like being in my doctoral program, for example, right? It's like, oh my God, like how am I going to fit that into my schedule and readings and papers and class? But you do it. I mean, yeah, it's a little rough at the beginning, but it's like, oh wow, like, you reprioritize, and So like, I just wish if people would do that with technology. Like, it's amazing what new habits they could create in a healthier way. So you're not abandoning technology, you're just using it differently. You're not making it that trap, versus you're helping it, or you're creating it as a tool for yourself.
It's funny that you say
Um,
that, Jason. I was on I think it was a Tony Robbins program actually, and somebody who was the complaint was, I just don't have enough time. Like my time is spent. There is no extra time in my life to do any more of this stuff. And Tony said, "Give me your phone." And he went into the app and noticed that there was like 36 hours or something in the week that was devoted to, social media. And he goes, "It's bullshit. You don't have the time. You're just choosing something different." And everybody in the audience just went, and we all kind of had a look at our phone and went, "Oh God," so we have this story that we don't have time. But the fact is, we're filling our time with things that aren't useful.
right. I mean, it's like when you look, right, like that 36 hours, that's like almost a whole work week.
Work week. Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Yeah. It just, when you see through, when you see things through those different lenses, it's like, wow, okay.
And that
Like,
doesn't also include then the television time that might be on top of that. Right. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so just a few more things in this area of, like Leanne talked about a little bit earlier, is activate the do not disturb mode, the focus mode, 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. Um, this lets the messages come through in silence. Your brain stops expecting incoming stimulation, and allows you actually to have your body lower cortisol levels, and it prepares you for melatonin release, which we all love to get a good night's sleep. Um, and this next point, like, I am not perfect at it. I've been trying to get better, but it's the whole no screen 60 minutes before bed, right? So, like I said, I am no perfectionist in this. I am way at fault, but it's definitely a good constant reminder that it's like, like, just try to do better in this department, because, you know, screens keep the brain in a state of vigilance. The blue light suppresses melatonin, but the bigger issue is the neuro overstimulation. Your brain can't shift into that deep sleep mode if it's still processing conversation threads, to-do lists, social comparison, and all the other et ceteras that come with that. So to kind of end this section here, some tools of and habits of: replace your screens with reading, and that's actually reading like a
Like a,
paperback,
like a
like an
book,
actual hard
like a
copy of
picture
something,
book.
right? An actual book, right?
Yeah.
Stretching, breath work, which we talked about, and gave you some um, good apps that can assist you with that. Light journaling, recommendation of pen to paper. Um, a slow, warm shower. It's amazing how much that can also reset. Now that doesn't mean to just like then take your phone into the shower with you. It's like, just have, make make that you time.
Hmm.
And one thing I remember I was going to say above is when we were talking about kind of those times of the day where there's no phones, right? No phones, no screens, no nothing. Like we talked about last week in the environmental well-being, create yourself a well-being space, for your environment, and make that a no phone zone, a no digital zone. Make that your zone where you read the hard copy book, you journal, pen to paper, etc., or stretch or whatever. But even if it's a tiny little corner because you live in a studio, make it a no phone zone,
Yeah.
and turn off your notifications, or maybe just even turn off your phone. Like, reset it. It's actually good to reset your phone from a security standpoint if you actually turn your phone off. They say once a day. So those some little tips and tricks and pieces of awareness for folks to bring into, especially now as we're moving into the end of the year and then moving into the new year, where there's just so much going on with gift giving and buying and commercials and this is that and the next thing. is we're just so into that screen use too. So I think some of these will be helpful as you navigate through the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely agree. So the key concept here is that when we reduce the noise from our technology, our presence returns.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversations get deeper. Our creativity kind of resurfaces, it bubbles up to the top, and we can reconnect with ourselves and with others. And surely that is worth it at the end of the day. So again, turn off your notifications. Your brain will thank you. It will thank you for giving it some space. Start your day with something that makes you feel good, as Jason said, like move your body, meditate, journal, do something. Create those digital or no digital zones, like Jason just mentioned. Like really, you've got your work, your rest, your creativity, your connection. Like create these spaces that are phone zone free. Use apps if you're going to that actually build well-being, not that erodes it. And have one tech-free ritual that you can do every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. We often talk about micro habits, like start small and build on that, because you'll find that those 10 minutes become your favorite time. And often where you'll do your best thinking, come up with your most creative insights, solutions to problems that you couldn't find before. And be intentional and ask yourself, why am I opening this app? Why am I opening this app? Because before we can make a difference, we need to have awareness around the why.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, folks, technology isn't the enemy. It's the mindless use of technology is the enemy.
Yeah.
Using it without intention, using it just to use it versus like you said, Leeanne, why am I opening this app? Or, you know, why am I sending this text that may not be, you know, so nice or whatever, right? Um, and also one thing too, I'd like to mention is that before we move into our book recommendations, is we all have phones. It's like having our computer in our hand. But instead of just texting somebody, pick up the phone and call them. That's connection too. So it's like, I'm not saying that do that in your no phone zone, but maybe instead of just being on the screen, use your listening skills and use your communication skills. Because that also helps you get your mind in a different state instead of like texting back and forth. And it helps with that connection because sometimes I hear from people like, nobody calls me anymore. People just text, that's all they do.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
you
that
can't
also
read tone in
contributes.
a text, right? Like
No,
it's
no.
Mm,
And I think that has created some of the loneliness that we have.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I just wanted to put that make a phone call in there because it's, I mean, sometimes even I'll just pick up the phone and call Leeanne. We're 19-hour time difference. Now I'll have to look at my clock to see that she's not sleeping. But sometimes it's just like, you know what? Hey, I'm just going to give Leeanne a quick call, and if I can get her, awesome. If not, then I'll send her a text. But sometimes it's just shaking it up to do something a little bit different.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because connection is so important, right? It is so important. So when you choose intentional tech, you choose a calmer nervous system, you choose a clearer mind, you choose a happier heart because you've got that human connection, and you're more aligned to the things that are important to your life, right? Which brings you joy. So, yeah, really great conversation today, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
So we're going to move into our book recommendations for this topic. So bear with me. So hopefully you can, where are we here? Sorry, wrong screen. But we've got a couple of books that we wanted to talk about in relation to this topic. The first one, actually, the first two is by Carl Newport. Deep Work is brilliant for understanding how that digital distraction fractures your focus that we've talked about, and why that uninterrupted time enhances your productivity, and how to create habits that actually protect attention. So it's a really good book for leaders or creators or anyone who wants to maintain their mental clarity. The other book that is also written by Carl Newport is Digital Minimization. And again, this has really helped you for redesigning your digital life. So recreating and setting those boundaries without losing opportunity, choosing that higher quality tech experience over passive consumption. And I love that word, passive consumption, right? So it's about having choice as opposed to just being passive. And again, it talks about how tech should be our servant, not our master. So they're two books that are really great books written by Carl Newport. And I've heard many people talk about Deep Work as being a great resource. So I just wanted to highlight those first. Do you want to speak to the next one, Jason, or do you want me to do the three?
You could do the three, and then I'll do the top three tips.
Okay. So the next one is Stolen Focus by Joanne Hari. And this is really a great book that talks about why our collective attention is collapsing, and that the emotional and society impact of tech overload. So it goes into depth about ways to rebuild your presence, your depth of a personality, and your critical thinking skills. So again, it's really a great book that blends that kind of emotional intelligence and behavioral angle when it comes to working with technology. And the last one is this Indistractable. I love that name, Indistractable, by Nur El, I think is how you pronounce it. So excuse me if I've butchered that surname. But again, it's a great book for understanding neuroscience and habit change, and understanding our internal triggers and why we get hooked, and how to break some of these digital habits that we've got so we can regain control of our time and our attention. So they're great books to help you to refocus, redirect, get back into alignment with what's important, and set up those boundaries that we need so that technology is our servant and we're doing it by choice.
Awesome. And then with that comes our top three tips from today's conversation with Leeanne and I. The first one is use tech with intention, not impulse. Because every time you pick up your phone, your brain is seeking a dopamine hit, right? It interrupts the loop. It brings down your IQ. And to ask yourself that question that we posed a little bit ago is, why am I opening this? Is it intention, or is it out of habit? Right? Simple question you can ask yourself. And when you add 2 to 3 seconds of awareness, you actually shift from autopilot to agency. And an insight for this top tip through the neuroscience lens is this activates the prefrontal cortex, the part that is responsible for conscious choice and emotional regulation. So a great tip of use it with intention and not impulse. And you'll when you're in this new habit, you'll see the magical changes within yourself. The second tip is protect your nervous system with digital boundaries. And we gave you a whole bunch of great ways to infiltrate new digital boundaries, because your brain was not designed for constant interruption. To reduce overload by setting small but powerful boundaries, such as turn off 70 to 80% of your notifications, because probably 70, 80% of them you don't need to know multiple times throughout the day. Like we said, create phone-free zones, the bedroom, the bathroom, meetings, meals, and also your environmental well-being zone that we talked about last week to create within your space. Schedule focus blocks with do not disturb, and set app timers for social media. Um, and I would say also too, as another just kind of to do is maybe midweek and end week, go to that space that gives you kind of the breakdown, so you can see like, oh yes, I am actually reducing my amount of time on apps or on the internet or whatever. So those are like healthy check-ins on your digital boundaries. Um, and this overall protects your cognitive bandwidth and prevents emotional exhaustion so that you can thrive in those other areas of your life that you really want to thrive in. And finally, the third tip is make tech a well-being tool, not a distraction tool. So with this is create your digital world so it supports the identity you're becoming, right? I mean, if you want to become something new or graduate to a new level or be in a higher entity of thriving, you're going to have to change. And part of that change is curating your digital world and how it is either mastering your life or it's actually there as a tool to help you as you grow and change and get to those next levels. So, like we said earlier in today's conversation, is use meditation apps, breathwork timers, sleep and health trackers, learning platforms, focus music apps, digital journals. Let technology elevate you, expand you, and ground you, not drain you. And I think that's something important to think about is if technology is draining you so much, you're not using it in the right way. And that is a personal awareness that each of us can only notice for ourselves. I mean, people in your life can notice, but internally, you're the one that notices that.
Actually, I would say, Jason, the truth is that people don't see or aren't aware how much technology drains them until they're not
Mm-hmm.
on technology, and then they see how much more energy they have.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those, it kind of stills your joy before you know it's actually gone, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting concept. So challenge yourself really to do some tech-free time and just see how you feel and how much more aliveness shows back up in your world.
Yeah. And I think this is a great time of year to do that, right? Because it's the holidays. A lot of people are getting together with family, friends, and loved ones. And why not be in presence, right?
Yeah.
Why not be in presence with those people instead of in stress and distraction?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although we know that the holidays aren't necessarily great times for everybody. So
Everyone.
let's talk about our next week's session that we're having, which is a holiday well-being guide. And we're going to look at how we can navigate the holiday season with less stress and more presence. Because we're aware that, it's not always happy, happy, joy, joy at this time of year. There's a lot of pressure that comes in, and a lot of it is self-imposed and some of it is external. So we really want to kind of have this well-being guide around how to navigate the holiday season so you can enjoy it rather than feel stressed about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we advertised that this was our last well-being, we actually decided that to make our holiday episode also about well-being because everything that we've talked about over the last 10 through the 10 dimensions of well-being, it just kind of comes home since we're ending right at the holidays for the year. Is that why not give folks this kind of holiday well-being guide that you were talking about, Leeanne, and being in more presence, and looking at areas where you can reduce that stress.
Yeah, absolutely. So next session is our last session for this season and for the year. And let's go.
Oh, was actually not for the season.
No, sorry, for this series. I keep getting
Yes.
that languaging wrong. This series. Um, so next week is our final for this year, and we will reconvene on January 14 for LA and January 15 for us in Sydney. And we'll give you an announcement soon on what the next series is going to be about. But next week is our last week. So I'm looking forward to our wrap up. It's been an absolute joy doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, if you follow Leanne and I both on social media and via our YouTube channel, we'll be doing real shorts from all of our episodes throughout this series. So be on the lookout for those over the coming weeks, and they'll just be, short gold nuggets of digestible information. We just so value everyone who's been out there supporting us along this new journey that we decided to take with each other.
Yeah.
So, thanks for joining us today for today's conversation on digital well-being, digital technological well-being, adapting with intention, making tech a tool, not a trap.
Yeah, we hope that it sparked something new, whether it's a new insight, a fresh perspective, or even just a question worth exploring or a new habit worth implementing. Try something small to reconnect, really, because that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And our mission here at Let's Talk is simple, to have the conversations that matter and to remind you, you don't have to do this complicated, complex thing called life on your own and figure it out all by yourself, because we are here, to help you along the way, and to be alongside you through the intentional conversations that we bring to our podcast.
Yeah. So as usual, if you like what you heard today, share the episode, subscribe, and keep the conversation going with us.
Yes, because when we talk,
we really talk.
And anything is possible.
So let's talk.
With real conversations.
And limitless possibilities. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.